Thank you so much, Leanne. Now, the Special Investigating Unit, or the SIU, issued a statement yesterday in response to allegations contained in an anonymous document that was levelled against the unit. The document, which was sent to the Public Protector's Office as a complaint, insinuates that there's a relationship between the Public Works Deputy Director General Imtiaz Fazel and Andy Mothibi, the head of the SIU. Now, it further goes on to assert that the DDG is strategically placed at Public Works in order to ensure that no one in the inner circle is prosecuted by the SIU because of this friendship. Advocate Andy Mothibi, the head of the SIU, is here to engage with us on this matter. Thanks so much for coming through.
No, thank you very much, Sakina. We appreciate the opportunity to come and engage with you on Morning Live and clarify our situation with regard to this allegation.
So let's start here. First and foremost, how did you get hold of this particular document?
This document came to our attention as a result of those other people who are mentioned in the complaint. They approached SIU to come and almost present their response in terms of what is it that they would have done or not done. And remember that SIU is conducting investigations at the Public Works. So as we went through this document, then we became aware that it makes also allegations. You would have read all this complaint in that document. It's in the main, most of the allegations around appointments, contracting at the Public Works, and is directed to the former minister and the deputy minister and some of the senior officials. But somewhere in the document, it now focuses on the investigations that SIU conduct at Public Works, and that's where it now mentions that the Public Works have paid so much money, I think in the region of about 300 or 400 million, and none of this so-called inner circle has been prosecuted simply because of this relationship between Imtiaz, Fazel and I. So we are here, or I'm here in particular, to come and publicly deny and refute those allegations. You would have seen.
On what basis are you refuting the allegations?
The basis that firstly there is no friendship that exists between Mr. Fazel Imtiaz and myself.
Do you know him?
I know him. I know him simply because of his DDG role, and he is the contact person between the Department of Public Works and the SIU. And in that process, we then get to contact him and arrange meetings with the Public Works to go and give them update on where we are with our investigations. That is the nature of the relationship between Imtiaz Fazel and myself and the department. Just for information, I don't actually get to be contacted directly. In some instances, I get messages through my office and through the chief investigating officer of SIU, who then have contacted the department. But naturally, it gets to me, and then we get to chat and say when should the meeting be, and then we get to prepare our full update to the department.
Let's just take a step back with regard to the actual investigations involving the Department of Public Works that the SIU would be involved in. Can you just take us into your confidence in terms of what exactly you have been investigating, say over the past 5 years or so with regard to Public Works?
Right. The SIU has investigated based on about 5 proclamations that were signed by the President. As you would know, that we only investigate based on the proclamation signed by the President. And those proclamations date back to around 2010, 2014, 2015. We've got a proclamation in 2018 And there's a new proclamation that has now sort of been signed, extending some of the scope of the 2018 investigations to cover day-to-day maintenance. But to your question, the areas of investigation would range from irregular lease agreements that have been entered into between the department and some of the landlords, and the allegations that we have focused on up to now has been on the basis that the leases were awarded irregularly. And we found irregularities in the awarding of those tenders, that process has not been followed in terms of awarding that. And remember, we investigate based on the PFMA, which is the Public Finance Management Act requirements, and the Treasury regulations, and the Constitution, which says any state institutions, before they procure services, is got to be on a competitive process prescribed by the PFMA. If there's any other process outside of that, it's got to be, which is normally called deviation, then it's got to be appropriately authorized. So we have found various irregularities, and we have pronounced ourselves. There's various contracts that have been challenged at the moment by the SIU. We've got almost about 20 contracts that have been challenged, and the summonses have been served against landlords. We are now at court, and the value of those contracts, which is likely to be recovered based on the court judgments, on the court orders, is to the value of more than 1 billion. So amongst others would be irregular contracts, and then there's instances where we've found that landlords or the department would be paying for a space that has been overly estimated or overly priced. The department paying for the space that it does not occupy. A simple example would be that the department has entered into a lease agreement to pay, say for example, for 10 parking bays, and they are made to pay for about 30 parking bays. In other instances, you would find that there's also so-called ghost leases. Yeah, leases which the department is paying for, but those leases do not exist.
But let's come to the crux of the matter. Yeah. Thanks for outlining and explaining to us, some of what it could be. But the crux of the matter here, as contained in these allegations, is that essentially there's an inner circle that is being protected from prosecution, from you at the SIU taking further action against them. So who actually has been hauled before the courts to answer for some of these undertakings that you've just outlined? Right.
Sakina, firstly, I personally am not aware of the so-called inner circle. Our process is as follows: that if we find that there is irregularities relating to contracts, we take those to court and we institute civil litigations to recover on behalf of the state departments and other state institutions. If we find that there is anyone in the department who is guilty of any misconduct, our process is that we then package the evidence, refer it to the department with the expectation that the department should institute disciplinary process. One of the other outcomes is that if we find that there's evidence, sufficient evidence that requires anyone to be prosecuted, we refer that to the National Prosecuting Authority. That is the requirements in terms of the law that enables us to investigate.
Let me ask this in another way.
Today.
Let me ask this in another way. Are there any senior officials who have been implicated and hauled before the courts to answer for some of these transactions?
Right. We have made referrals to the NPA in terms of the criminal evidence that we have found. And if you look at our statement that we issued yesterday, there's various numbers of senior officials, including former director generals, former DDGs, former project managers, and those have, at least from the point of view of disciplinary process, we have information from the department that the actions have been taken and most of those have been dismissed or they've been terminated. So with regards to the criminal investigations, we've got about more than 200 referrals, and varying from senior levels to the lower levels. Those as required by our legislation, we've referred those matters to the NPA. And part of what we are doing now, Sakina, is that as part of the strategy, previously we would not have as part of our value chain where we are following up on these referrals. We have now instituted a new value chain as part of the new strategy to deliberately follow up on these referrals, be it disciplinary or be it criminal referrals. So on the criminal aspect, which is the part that you're focusing on, we've referred so many, as I said, more than 200 referrals to the NPA. So what we are doing now is to engage the NPA, as we have engaged the department to give us feedback whether they've taken disciplinary actions against these officials. We are engaging NPA to ensure that we follow up and find out whether the prosecution will result. And we are at the stage now where the NPA is continuing to give us information on whether the prosecutions will result or not. In cases where there is no prosecution instituted, we would like to understand the rationale for not prosecuting anyone.
So according to some of these weekend media reports, senior people like former Minister of Public Works Thulas Nxesi, former Deputy Jeremy Cronin, some other senior officials as well, the claims are that there may have been some form of protection to shield these people from prosecution, and that you somehow personally benefited as Advocate Mothibi from some 400 million rand that was paid for investigation. So what's your response to that?
Right, my response to that is that I refute and deny that aspect. There is no way that I would have protected anyone. In how we do our investigation is that the proclamation would be signed off and we allocate a team, an investigation team. That is not led by myself. It's led by the Chief National Investigation Officer of SIU. And there's a program manager who's the leader of the investigations. There's also a project manager who leads the investigation. Then there's a whole lot of investigating teams, right? How it happens is that if there's any evidence that these investigating teams pick up, it goes to the project manager, it goes to the program manager, and then ultimately to the Chief National Investigating Officer, who puts a report, and the report comes to me. So there is no way. There's checks and balances in our system to ensure that no one protects anyone. If there's evidence that is indicating to anyone, and as we say in our statement, that irrespective of your station in life, we will take action. There is no way, and if there's any way that they have had evidence pointing to the former minister or any other person, let them produce it so that we can indicate, and it should be indicated when was it produced and what has happened with it.
So according to your knowledge, was there at any point any sort of investigation by the SIU into former minister then of the department, Nxesi or Cronin?
As at today, I'm not aware that there's any specific allegation that the investigating team has received and investigated against the former minister or the former deputy minister. If there is any, I would not be aware of it up to now. It hasn't been brought to my attention. But as I say, should there be any evidence that points to any one of those two, the investigating team will investigate it and they will come up with the recommendations that's appropriate given the finding. With regard to the payments, Sakina, the complainants, they probably are aware that SIU is entitled by law to charge for the fees for the service that we render. And we have charged over time. And these investigations, as I say, they started in 2010. We have charged an amount that could, yes, be up to about 300, 400 million. We are busy as we speak just making sure that we verify all the invoices so that we can be satisfied. But I want to assure the public that we can account for any money that has been paid to SIU. It doesn't end up with in the pocket or in the account of any individual in SIU or myself. And what happens is that every year the Auditor General audits these business processes, any investigation. And how our people do the work is that they complete timesheets for every investigation that we do, and it is on that basis that we bill the state institutions. And every money that's paid in is on the basis of the time spent and the outcomes reached and the findings released. So in this instance, we are able to account for all the money that the department has paid to us.
So the matters before the public protector, and you say you categorically refute all of these allegations.
I categorically refute those allegations, specifically that seem to suggest that the money has been, or I benefited from those monies. As I said, we'll be ready to account to that. So, amongst others, and what has really made us to go public, it's because this has to do with this important entity of government, the Special Investigating Unit, which is so key in fighting corruption in government. So any insinuation that there is issues of integrity that create negative perception towards the institution, we have to stand up and make sure that we address those issues.
Do you promise to come back once the public protector has actually concluded her investigation into this matter?
I will come back to ensure that we account and respond to any other finding that the public protector would have returned.
And just finally, the SABC. We are at the SABC, so I can't not ask you about the SABC, the investigations that the SIU has conducted into matters here. How far are we, and how many people have appeared before the courts as we speak?
Right. Sakina, in this matter, and the board of the SABC receives various updates from the Special Investigating Unit investigating team. I also more often have been present when those presentations have been done. We have faced the investigation divided into two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. We have literally completed phase 1, and that phase 1 focused in the main around irregular contracts that have been concluded, irregular appointments of employment appointments, and there's also some of the criminal activities that we have found. So to date, we're focused on about 7 contracts that we have investigated, and all of those contracts have been found that they've been entered into irregularly, and we are at courts with all of those contracts. And the value of those contracts, just give or take, is more than about 300 million. So we have given this feedback to the board. We are now at court, and we are waiting for the court process to take its course. And you may have read that we have really pronounced ourselves that the court processes, because of the court roles in the normal courts, we find that there's some delays. So the president has signed a proclamation which reestablishes the special tribunal of SIU. When that special tribunal opens its doors and starts adjudicating some of these cases, if they had not started yet, we can then, with the parties involved, agree to take them to the special tribunal, which will see the adjudication fast-tracked. So in terms of that is one of the court leg, which is the civil part. In terms of the criminal, there's one. We've made several referrals on the criminal part, but there's one executive, and this is the part where we have seen quick turnaround time from the NPA. When we are delighted with that, this is exactly what we want to see. One executive has been charged, appeared in court on fraud charges. We're looking forward to ensuring that we support that process with the evidence and make sure that we return the charges of guilty. We have also found that there's been irregular appointments of staff and irregular payments, and we are in court with the with the responsible executive who's no longer with the corporation to recover those monies. So as we speak, we are at the stage where we have closed phase 1. Phase 2 is also underway. It will be closed down. It will be closed up soon. So in terms of further details, I would like to give the opportunity for SIU to present to the board so that we can finalize this investigation appropriately.
Advocate Mothibi, thanks so much for your time this morning. Advocate Andy Mothibi, the head of the SIU, engaging with us on allegations contained in anonymous documents levelled against the unit sent to the public protector to investigate a relationship between the Department of Public Works' Deputy Director General Imtiaz Fazel and Andy Mothibi, the head of the SIU. Hence, some inner circle people are alleged to have been protected from being charged with wrongdoing. Well, that brings us up to just about. Now we're going to go to a break, and then we'll bring you the newspaper headlines, what's making headlines in the papers. Stay with us.